One of the first decisions a new RVer has to grapple with is whether or not to get a gas or a diesel vehicle, whether it's going to be a pickup truck to tow a trailer or if it's going to be a motorhome. There's a big difference between gasoline engines and diesel engines, and it's not always quite clear to everybody what the best thing for them is going to be. So I thought it'd be prudent to take a little bit of time to talk about the differences between gasoline and diesel vehicles. First of all, it's unequivocally true that a diesel engine is better. By most metrics, a diesel engine is better. It is a better engine for towing. It is a better engine for longevity. It's a better engine for fuel mileage, all that sort of stuff. However, if you're looking to buy a brand new truck, for instance, a diesel is going to run you about $9,000 to $10,000 more than a similarly equipped gasoline vehicle. That's a huge difference, especially when you look at financing it and the additional cost of interest over the years on that $9,000 that you've financed. So we need to look at all the positives and all the negatives to decide whether or not it's worth it for us to spend that additional money on a diesel vehicle. So let's start with the first thing, fuel efficiency. A diesel engine is about 12% more efficient than a gasoline engine. So 1 gallon of diesel fuel is going to get you about 12% further than 1 gallon of gasoline. I'm driving our Ram 2500. It's a Hemi gasoline engine, a 5.7 liter, and it gets about 9 miles a gallon towing our trailer. Our trailer is about 8,000 pounds loaded, 8,500 pounds loaded, and 9 miles per gallon or so. And then we get about 15 miles per gallon on average when we're not pulling the trailer. A similar diesel setup is going to get about 12 miles, 13 miles a gallon pulling a trailer. So that's a decent difference. I mean, it might only sound like a few miles per gallon, but when you're down in these low numbers, that's a big difference. However, diesel fuel costs about 10% more, at least as of right now. Every now and then it's about the same, or you'll get lucky and you'll find diesel even cheaper than gasoline. It's rare though, and sometimes it swings the other way where diesel's more than 10% more than gasoline. So in terms of the price and the fuel efficiency, it's nearly a wash, especially when you factor in that diesel engines, modern diesel engines, need to use diesel exhaust fluid. So if you drive about 15,000 miles a year, a diesel engine may save you $300 or $400. But on top of that, you've got to add in the cost of diesel exhaust fluid, which is going to cost you about $200 to $300 a year for that same range. So it gets real close. Is it worth saving $100, $150 a year to finance an additional $9,000 plus dollars? Probably not. But of course, fuel efficiency isn't the only thing that matters, and it's not even one of the major things. But if you're looking at that as a factor, I really think fuel efficiency comes out in the wash, except for one thing: the amount of fuel that your vehicle can carry. So if your gas truck has the same size fuel tank as your diesel truck, you're going to be filling your gas truck up 12% more often, and that can become a pain. You might also think that gasoline is a lot easier to come by. So there's a benefit in having gasoline because every fuel station is going to have it. Well, this day and age, pretty much every fuel station that you're going to come across is going to have diesel. The only times that I've ever had an issue finding diesel is in big cities, like within big cities. Most of the stations don't have diesel. There are some, but you'll have to sort of, map it out on Gas Buddy and find a place to get diesel, and diesel's going to cost you more and more within a big city like Chicago, because it's just not common for them to truck as much of it in. The other thing, though, is that it is really difficult to pull a big rig like an RV, or truck pulling a trailer, or a motorhome of any size into most fuel stations. And one big advantage somebody owning a diesel truck has, or a diesel motorhome, is that they can use the pumps in the back of a truck stop that truckers use. Now, those pumps, depending on the state, might be a little bit more expensive. They might be a little bit cheaper. They might be the same. But it is a dream to be able to pull your RV through those truck pumps, because you fit with plenty of room to spare. And if you have a gasoline truck or a gasoline motorhome, that option is not going to be available to you. So it is a bigger challenge to find fuel stations, to drive into them without getting stuck and without having to back up and all that sort of stuff. So really like having a diesel truck for that. I no longer have a diesel, and I can tell you I do miss it for that reason primarily. But let's talk about where diesels really outshine gasoline. Towing. And obviously, if we're talking about RVs, we're talking about either towing behind a truck, or we're talking about a motorhome that's really heavy. Diesels don't care as much about weight and about inclines as a gasoline vehicle does. So it's not a simple equation, that fuel efficiency, that 12%. It's not quite as simple as that. The heavier you are, the more efficient your diesel is going to be over a gasoline. So for that reason, you'll notice the heaviest vehicles on the road, like semi-trucks, like big buses, like most of your big Class A motorhomes, at least the tandem axle ones, are all diesel. And that's because it just doesn't make sense to put a gasoline engine in something that big, because the fuel efficiency at those weights is just so bad that the cons are clearly outweighed by the pros when it comes to towing or moving around something that's really, really, really heavy. Let's talk about braking for a second. One advantage that people seem to like about diesels is that a lot of them come with what's called an exhaust brake. And what it does is it uses the exhaust of the engine to slow it down, to slow the whole vehicle down. So you turn that exhaust brake on when you're going downhill, it assists your regular braking system, allowing you to have a lot better control when going downhill, especially at a long mountain pass. And gasoline engines don't have those. However, gasoline engines don't really need them, because gasoline engines have a lot higher compression than a diesel. So the compression of the engine, if you take your foot off the brake, automatically begins to slow you down, even if you're on a downhill. You're getting the same benefit automatically in a gasoline vehicle without having to have an exhaust brake. So that's not something that really factors into it too much. Diesel engines are a little bit cheaper to maintain, at least regular maintenance. You don't have to change the oil as much. They use more oil, for sure, quite a bit more oil. I mean, some rigs, we're talking gallons of oil. My bus that I don't own anymore, but our former bus that was our old rig, used 5.5 gallons of motor oil. But you don't have to change it as often. We only had to change the oil in the bus once a year or so, a little bit more often than that. We tried to do it, but You don't have to change it anywhere near as often as in a gasoline engine. Gasoline engines take a little bit more maintenance for things like belts and spark plugs and plug wires, all that sort of stuff. It adds up to a little bit more over time. However, when you do have problems and things need to be repaired, diesels definitely cost more to repair. The shop rates are higher, the parts cost more, they definitely cost more money to repair. Now, diesels don't need to be repaired as often. So I think diesels win in this category. Next on the list is useful life. It's said that a gasoline truck engine is usually good for about 250,000 miles. Truck engines are generally built a decent amount better than your standard car on the road, which most don't get up to the 250,000 mile range. But your gasoline engine will probably get you there. You're going to have some repairs along the way. A diesel engine can get you 500,000 miles or more, near double the life. They're definitely going to last a lot longer. Now, when I say they're going to last that long, I mean before a rebuild. And they can certainly last longer if they're rebuilt, both diesel and gas. But you got to ask yourself, do you want to do that? What's that going to cost? It can cost another $10,000 to rebuild a diesel engine, or quite a bit more, depending on the size of your engine. If you got a big diesel pusher motorhome, it can cost you a lot of money to have your engine rebuilt. And most RVs, honestly, if we're talking about motorhomes, aren't going to go anywhere near that amount of miles in their lifetime. You know, if you think about it, we put certainly more miles on our truck driving around in the cities that we travel to, or the towns or the back roads, wherever we are. We put more miles on the truck without the trailer attached, even though we're full time, even though we travel heavily, than we do with the trailer attached to it. So a truck is going to end up going more miles over time than virtually any RV on the road. You're just simply not going to hit 500,000 miles unless you really, really, really want to in a diesel motorhome. But the usable life is, without question, much longer, if not nearly double, in a diesel. And that's why you'll see the resale value of a diesel engine being quite a bit higher. You know, a car that's 15 years old is hardly worth anything. I mean, you can pick up a 15-year-old car for under $2,000 or less. But a 15-year-old truck can be over $20,000 if it's a diesel, because those diesel engines last a long time. And that certainly makes a big difference. So when it comes to that additional $10,000 or $9,000 that you put into the price of buying your vehicle, it can last you longer. You can recoup that when you go to sell it, or at least a good portion of it. So the question really becomes, did you have the money in the first place to buy that truck? If you got extra money to spare, sure, heck, why not? But if you don't, that's when the difficult decisions have to be made. So what's the bottom line? For me, what it comes down to is fuel efficiency is a wash. Maintenance is about a wash. Experts say that the cost of ownership of a diesel is slightly less than a gasoline over time. So for me, those two things don't matter as much. So what it comes down to me is the experience that you want to have on the road and what kind of RV you're purchasing. A diesel is going to definitely make you feel more comfortable on those big climbs. It's going to pull like butter up a mountain pass, where your gas engine is going to be revving high, and that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. It's okay, but it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. So for me, it's really about this, though. The smallest RVs do not need a diesel. We're talking trailers in the 6,000 or less category. absolutely do not need a diesel. The smallest motorhomes, you don't need a diesel. Mid-sized RVs, it's nice. It's certainly helpful. And your experience will be better in a diesel truck or a diesel motorhome if you are towing a mid-size RV or if you're driving a mid-size motorhome. And for the heaviest, your biggest fifth wheels, your large tandem axle motorhomes, a diesel is absolutely required, and I don't see any reason that you wouldn't want to get one. So that's really what it comes down to me. And I think whatever you choose, just think about what kind of truck you need, what kind of truck you can afford. If you're not going to buy it before you buy your RV, the worst thing you want to do is go out and buy a trailer that you've got to buy a truck to pull that you can't afford. For me, I think finding the trailer that's perfect for you is first. A lot of people will say vice versa. In the end, you really need to be shopping for both at the same time, unless you own one or the other already, and sort of make the decision in tandem, and you'll be all right. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that was informational. If you have any questions, send us an email at editor@rvmiles.com or leave them in the comments, and we'd be happy to try and answer them for you. That's it for today. Keep logging those RV miles, everybody. Listen to us on the RV Miles podcast, and we'll see you next time.